I've changed
What do
from
you
our
want to talk
usual
about
hello.
today?
Um,
Well,
Today, I want to introduce a topic that's a real debate out there, and I want to see how you see it. And the question for today is, should teams and should companies in general hire based or also based on personality tests?
ooh, personality tests. Higher based on personality tests. Hmm. Well, the short answer, in my opinion, would be mostly no. Mostly or completely no when it comes to actually hiring. I don't know if I want to say that you should never do personality tests as part of the recruitment process, although I think in most situations you shouldn't. But even if you do
Mhm.
for some particular reason, and I just don't want to be like, 100%, but even if you do, I don't think that that should be one of the main deciding factors. And I can explain why,
Yeah.
in my opinion. What do
Okay,
you
that's
think?
great. Before you go into the explanation, I just want to give my input. I also believe it's not okay to hire based on personality tests because they are not, most likely are not relevant statistic and will not give you valuable information about how that person is really gonna fit into the environment you're trying to bring that person in. And also what I specifically what I when I think about hiring should be like dating. You should date a lot before you take a commitment that is more serious, and try to talk with that person and assess that person by having multiple interviews, even if it can be like a painful process, a long and painful process. It's better to understand that person, especially if you're hiring for a top level position in your company, before you are actually hiring that person. So
Yeah.
regarding tests, no at hiring, most likely, with exceptions, obviously. But we can talk about using them after the person has onboarded the team.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
what was your idea?
Yeah. So let me give a disclaimer first. So I'm not a
Mhm.
psychologist.
Neither I.
Um, but I've used and seen used personality tests in many ways. When I was a manager in various companies, I had consultants, people that did personality tests for my employees in various situations. I've consulted for companies when I became a consultant that use personality tests in various ways, and I've also used them as a trainer and consultant in certain ways. And whenever I do personality tests, when I apply them and discuss them, I always only focus on the professional aspects of that personality test. So I'm talking about using personality tests in a professional environment. This is not about how do you feel about your mother type of thing, like in the movies. This is about how could potentially your personality impact your behavior and performance at work.
Yeah.
Can we, by applying a personality test and learning more about the people's personality types, can we maybe match them better to specific roles? I think that's one
Hmm.
of the main things people are trying to do. They're saying, oh, we're just going to do a personality test, and then I know exactly who needs to be a manager, who needs to be this, who needs to be in sales, who needs to be there. I don't think that's the case. I think that's a trap.
Yeah.
um, because they're not that precise, and we'll
Yeah.
talk about how and why.
Basically, a great person that could be a salesperson could also be a people's manager, or because it's about the relationship and cultivating them and talking with people. I'm just giving an example.
Yeah,
So you
exactly.
pigeonholing someone into some position just because they took a personality test could be an error. You just have to see what the other skills of that person are. So
Yeah.
yeah, I want to ask you if you remember those tests. What, yeah, there was on the internet those kind of tests asking you what character are you in from different shows.
Yeah.
So you definitely should not use those kind of tests. Maybe just for fun, to see what Harry Potter character is each member of your team. I don't think that's gonna work for you and help you in any way. but definitely there are some tools that can provide insight on how to relate one to another, maybe
Yes.
not just only to see if a person is more compatible with a certain type of job, but better understand what triggers each person in order to be for it to be easier to communicate with that person. For example, if I
Y-
know
Yeah.
you are a result driven person, I will go to you with results and talk about results and not talk about people's feelings because you wouldn't care about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just an extreme
Exactly.
example.
Yeah. 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 So I totally agree with that. One other thing I want to say is that these personality tests, even when done professionally by professionals in
Yeah.
very carefully controlled conditions, even then, they're not mathematically, they're not a hard science like, math is. There's a
Mhm.
lot of evidence out there that says that, people take personality tests and the results can vary from one day to another depending on their mood, on their, how good they're feeling on that day. People change in time. So that's one thing. It's not that
Yeah.
precise. And then even if it is precise, let's say, the fact that you get whatever the result says, you're extrovert, analytical, judging, perceiving, whatever, that tells you
Mhm.
something, but doesn't tell you everything about that individual. People are way more
Yeah.
complicated than those 3, 4, 5 letters, whatever comes out of the personality test. So it is an instrument, but it's a very imprecise instrument. And the way I use it and the way I've seen it used correctly and usefully is like you say, you have a team, for example, and the team is always, there's some people in the team always arguing, and it's always difficult for them to agree on things, and it's difficult to make decisions, and sometimes they do that because they don't understand each other. And I used to think when I was younger that everyone is like me.
Mhm.
Like
Yes.
I didn't think it with these words. So if you asked me, I would say, no, people are not like me. People are different. But actually, I didn't understand that. And the way I approach things, so when I do something, I want maximum autonomy. I always want, give me just a high level objective and let me do my own thing. I don't like many rules and processes. I don't like
Mm.
to talk a lot to people. I don't like to um, get a lot of questions. Just let me do my thing and I'll get back to you if I need something. I like flexible plans. So I like to adjust the plan as I go. I am very comfortable with just a little bit of information. I don't need every detail. And then I'll try to figure out more and figure things out. And that's how I like to work. So I
Mm.
naturally picked projects and tasks and situations that were like that, very
Yeah.
flexible, very a lot of autonomy. And I
And for
thought that
example,
everyone wants that. So when I became
yeah,
a team leader and
exactly.
a manager, I need to give my people this thing. I need to give them autonomy
Autonomy.
and freedom and all these things because obviously they want that because I want that. So everyone wants that. And
And
there
what
was
happened?
there was a mistake because people are different and some people need
Yeah.
more structure, some people need
Yeah.
more support, some people want more predictability. People want different things, they need different things.
Yeah. I was about to ask how do you, if you, in your experience, happened to work with someone that was very conscious and was very detail oriented and needed to have all the details, all the information, and a very well structured plan in order to do their task. And how were you able to work with that kind of person? Was it hard for you? Were there some tips and tricks that help you to better work with that kind of person?
So I'll give you two examples. One was my manager. So my direct
Hmm.
manager in a company at a certain point for a while was a person that was almost the perfect opposite of me. uh, he wanted a lot of data. When you went to him with a proposal, with a question, he wanted you to go with a lot of analysis and maybe 2, 3 options. And he liked to discuss everything in detail. So, ask a lot of questions and talk about it. And almost never he would say yes or no. after one conversation. Almost always it would be like, can you find out a little bit more about this? Can you also talk to that guy? Can you also explore this option? And we'll talk again next week. And maybe we make a decision then. And I was the complete opposite. And I realized pretty quickly that an idea came to me and I was like, okay, let me call that guy. Hey, can I do this or that? And he was like, always, he was very polite, very,
Yeah.
I would never get an answer like that. So I realized, okay, if I want to work well with my manager, I need to prepare things ahead of time. I cannot do like this last minute stuff. He doesn't like to work like that. So I need to get in touch with him a week before, send him an email, set a meeting. He doesn't like to be, rushed.
Randomly.
In that meeting, I tell him exactly what we want to talk about. I prepare a few slides. I prepare a few options. I gather my data. I know that he'll want more research. I leave myself some time for that. And things went great. After I realized that.
And the
For a
other
while,
example?
I was frustrated. And that example, someone in my team who was also like this, like very risk adverse and always like, let's not rush. Are we sure it's the right thing? But are we 100% sure? Can we check again? Can we think again? Let me think some more. And initially, I was like frustrated. But then we took a personality test, all of us, and we discussed it. Someone helped us do that, like an external consultant. And we realized this. And when we took the personality test, it was like, so that's why you're always like, you want to think more and you want to be 100% sure.
Yeah.
And that's why I always want to move fast. And then it was like an open thing. We knew that. And I would actually say things like, hey, I know I tend to rush. And I know you want to be sure. I can't rush as much as I would like to, but you cannot be as sure as much as you would like to. So let's try to meet in the middle.
Yes, exactly. Is it the team leader's responsibility or the team members' responsibility to model themselves after the other person?
So it depends who you ask. I think so. There's two perspectives in the sense that if in a very fundamental way, I think is everyone's, no matter their position, is their responsibility to understand what's happening around them and to understand what they need to do in order to be successful and to decide how they want to adapt in order to be successful. But if you're a team leader or a manager, I think it's definitely your responsibility to understand that about your people as well. So I have expectations from both parties. I have expectations from everyone in the team to try to understand these things. And the more they understand them, the more senior I consider them because they're more self-aware.
Yeah.
But I also have expectations from the team leader to observe their people and understand these things about their people at the same time.
I would agree with you, but I would say it's a bit more the responsibility of the team leader to model after the team than trying to model an entire team after the way you are working and functioning. And yes, everybody has to be self-aware and understand what are their triggers, what works for them, what doesn't work for them, what they like, what they don't like, in order to better communicate with each other. But first and foremost, the team leader should be the first one who adopts this kind of attitude and try to show the benefits firsthand. See, I'm trying to model myself after you. We are working better. We are having results. Maybe you should try to do that also with your teammates and stuff like that. So yeah, basically the tools that gives you, I think the tool that gives you ways of better understanding the tendencies of another person, if they are proactive or reactive, they are introvert or extrovert, they are prone to action or rather risk adverse. Yeah, this kind of tests will help you more than the test that will say that someone is a poet at heart or they are musically inclined or this kind of test. There are all kind of tests. You have to think very well before you choosing a test. You have to choose a test that will enable the team to communicate better and work better, whatever the test it is. Not a test to, I don't know, guess some random attributes for each and every team member.
I mean, as a manager, I don't care about those things, and I think it's borderline
Mhm.
unethical and
Yeah.
annoying to get into personal things. It's not about that. But for
Yeah.
example, if we have two people working on, they get some requirements from
Mhm.
the client, and they need to estimate how long it will take to implement those requirements. The requirements are not perfect. They're never perfect. They're not complete.
Yeah.
Some detail is missing. Okay. And one of the people working on the estimates is very comfortable with the missing detail. They sort of fill in the holes and they assume things and they approximate things and
Mhm.
they come up with the number. And the other
Mhm.
person is like, no, I cannot estimate on these requirements. They're not complete. There's too many
Yeah.
missing pieces of information. To some degree, there's an objective truth there you can talk about, like some information you really need. But beyond a certain point, it's a different in personalities. One of them wants to
Yeah.
be like 100% sure, and the other one is more comfortable with some ambiguity. So
Yeah.
what I want as a manager is people to understand this about themselves, about their colleagues, so it enables them
Mhm.
to understand their own blind spots and to work together. That's what I want from a personality test at work.
So
I don't care, you know,
yeah.
what you
So
do at home.
the end purpose of taking this test is to better find works to work together, not to find things you need to compensate for. You are a very risk-taking person. You should go easier on the taking decisions without asking other persons, and you should consider more before taking more information before taking a decision. So it's not about necessarily trying to change the way a person is functioning. Maybe making them aware will help them enough so they will become more self-aware and try to control some of this stuff, but it's not something that should be imposed by the company. Oh, you are too detail oriented, you cannot work like this anymore, you have to
Yeah,
deliver faster, because it's not going to solve the problem in reality. It's just going to create more frustration for the person that is the subject of this criticism, basically, because you're trying to
yeah,
criticize for the way they are. So
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So you can definitely have a conversation with someone that, hey, you're too detail oriented and you're too
Mm,
perfectionist. But that should be a
yeah.
conversation based on, I've seen you doing this. Let's have a conversation. It's feedback. I have an open. It's a respectful conversation. It's not,
Yeah.
oh, I see something in a test, therefore you need to change something. So one
Yeah.
example about how I change something about myself, for example, in how I interact with other people, is that my personality is that when someone comes to me with a proposal, with an idea, my initial instinct is to critique that idea,
Mm,
not to criticize it like a hater,
yeah.
but to critique it, to look at it and say, okay, you could improve it here, you could improve it here.
Yeah.
Have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? In my
Yeah.
mind, I'm doing this with 110% good intentions. This is how I help people, right?
It's a
I
service.
look at
Yes.
exactly. This is how I'm trying. This is how I'm friendly. This is how I'm trying to help you. You have something, and I'm trying to make it better. Help you make it better.
Yeah.
But for some people, this is very demotivating. People that are more feeling based, and they come to you looking for
Mm,
more of an emotional support, like, "Hey, I appreciate you trying this. I appreciate you doing this. This is great.
mhm.
I understand what you're trying to do. I support you." So they look for this kind of an emotional support, and only then we discuss about the details of the thing, right? So
Mhm.
I realized at some point that I was doing this every time one of my people came to me with a proposal. I would be like with a very straight face. Okay, tell me about it.
Mhm.
And I will, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? With the best of intentions. But from their point of view, sometimes it felt like I don't like anything. You cannot,
Yeah.
there's no way to make me happy. I always find
Yeah.
a flaw in things. And I realized that and I said, okay, let's change the
Yeah.
way I do these things.
I think this is a natural tendency for all the employees that get into a position of expertise, of deep expertise, because people usually come asking of you of advice and helping them out. So basically you are defaulting to this kind of attitude without thinking of the counterpart in the conversation. Is that person
Yeah.
looking for feedback, or is just that trying to present proudly their work and get praised for it? So if you understand that the person that's the way of working for that person, you'll be more chill and you'll just say, yeah, that's great work. I appreciate the effort. If you need any feedback, let me know. So that
Exactly,
solves the problem.
exactly.
Yeah.
And also, for
What
example, as the intro,
yeah,
go ahead.
go, please.
I'll be quick. As an introvert,
Mm-hmm.
I usually say something after I thought about it a little bit, right? So when
Mm-hmm.
I say something, I usually already have more information in my head than what I'm saying, and I already have answers to potential questions. Like, so if I say, let's do this, and you ask why, I know why. And if you ask, what do we do if that happens, I usually have an answer.
Mm-hmm.
Extroverts are not like that. Extroverts usually just say things. They think about it
Yeah.
and they just say it, which is fine. But again, another thing I did as an introvert, an extrovert would say something, and I would be like, but what if we do in this situation? Or have you thought about that situation? And they never did, because that's not how
Mm-hmm.
they speak out loud as they're
Yeah.
thinking. And I was like, it's not, it's not a sufficiently researched idea. Again, that was wrong from me because they're just different. I think about something, I think about it for 3 days, not continuously. And after 3 days, I speak it. And
Mm-hmm.
obviously, I have all the answers, right? Maybe I
Yeah.
also Googled a little bit. They just speak about it. That doesn't mean it's what they do is bad. It's just different. So I need to understand that they
Yeah.
don't have as much detail and interact with them in a different way and help them develop that idea and not
Yeah.
have the same
Exactly.
expectations from them as I would have from me because we're different.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, we are all different and we have to accommodate each other, make everybody feel part of the team and try to
Yeah.
communicate as best as possible. I cannot not mention a tool that helped me a lot and gave me great insight because I was thinking in a position that uh, I was accentuating some personality traits because I was complimenting my leader. For example,
Mhm.
my leader was very action driven and he was doing mistakes, objective mistakes with important stuff. So that's why I have to be very conscious and detail oriented to compensate for his mistakes. It was a natural trait of mine anyway, but it was more accentuated in that position. Now that my position changed and I'm not working for anybody at the moment, I am the person who's doing crazy, taking crazy decisions and taking crazy actions, and everybody around me has to chill me down, calm me down. Dude, take a break. It's you are going too fast. You are gonna break some stuff in the way. So the tool that helped me to understand better this kind of stuff is Disc.
Yes.
Maybe
Yeah.
I don't know if you heard about it or not, but I'm not necessarily recommending it to persons that, but it was the most insightful one and most focused on relationship and communication with the other person. It gives you, for example, if you are talking with a specific type of profile in that Disc profile, it gives you prompts how to open questions, how to open the
Mhm.
conversations with that person so that person feels that you understand it, and actually you better understand because you know how to approach that person correctly.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
this is really interesting because, as you said earlier in the beginning, the tests are influenced by the mood you are having, and also they are influenced by the context you are in. If you are in
Yes.
a position and when you have a very uh, strict boss, for example, very detail oriented boss, you'll have to step up your game in
Yeah.
in terms of details, as you it was your example earlier, and you will be, if you take a test, then you'll appear to be more detail oriented than you actually are, because your natural state, it's something else that you are the one you are forced into at work, not
Mhm.
voluntarily forced into, but you naturally, we when a team is becoming coherent, you naturally try to fill up the gaps of the team if you
Yeah.
really want to make the team work, even if it is a team member, not necessarily as a team leader.
Yeah. You have a reaction and an action and a
Hmm.
reaction to that action. And sometimes when someone
Exactly.
exaggerates in one direction, someone else, without realizing, sometimes goes too much into
Compensates.
the opposite
Yeah.
direction. Yeah, it compensates. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
I heard about this. I haven't used it personally. I mean, I think I took it once with together with some colleagues a long time ago. What I've personally used was sometimes I use MBTI, sometimes I use Big Five, sometimes I don't even do the test. So I don't actually go to questions through questions. Sometimes I
Yeah.
send people a link. I don't care what the result is. But what I have is like I have some slides about each of those things, like introvert, extrovert, with examples from professional situations. And we
Yeah.
just talk through it. And I say, it's not important. You don't have to tell me. I don't care what those 4 letters or 5 letters or whatever are.
Yeah.
It's just important to understand the differences. It's important to go to 1, 2, 3, 4 examples and see how could someone react. And sometimes when people react differently, it's not because they're idiots or because they have something against you. It's just they approach situations differently. And
yeah,
I
that's
think
very,
that's the most
very
important
valuable.
thing.
Yeah, exactly. That's very valuable to do. It's not about the label that's associated with you after
Yeah.
you take the test. It's what you do with that information. For example, another side, interesting side, as a leader, has experienced that. It was that I used DISC so many times, and I went to the training because DISC is also associated with the 1, 2, or 3 days of training to explain to the team what the results mean and what to do with those results. It's not just something that you self-administer and hope it's gonna enlighten your perspective about your teammates. After better understanding that model, I can identify the person with just from regular conversation. I don't have to ask them to apply the test to understand where they fit in the model, and that naturally helps me to work better with everyone I work with, because within 10 minutes of conversation I can say, okay, that person is that kind of profile. And even if it's not perfect, it's helping to steer the conversation to direction that is more comfortable for everybody. And this is not manipulation. We have to make the disclaimer. Just because you are trying to adapt the way you are communicating and working to someone else, this doesn't mean that you have nefarious intentions and try to squeeze value out of them. It's just
so
making the relationship work.
Exactly. Manipulation is when you have a hidden agenda and which you don't say, and I'm trying to use you to get something which you're not aware of. So sorry, I banged something. I'm giving you like only half of the information or misleading information to get you to do something for an objective which is secret. Only I know. That's manipulation. The fact that I talk with someone, I get in touch with a person, and that person seems to be very, I don't know, excited about certain things, or very passionate or very concerned about a particular aspect of what they're doing. Like, they're very detail oriented, that they want a lot of data. The fact that I start to relate to that, and I also like data in certain ways, and the fact that I use a certain language, that I try to find that common interest, is not like I'm manipulating anyone. It's just basic human interaction. I don't know how to say.
We would naturally do that, and just these tools just take a veil from our face and help us see better the other person and understand better the other person, and I think that's great.
Yeah, so it's just like basic stuff. Like we have a group of friends, and we're going to mountain hikes once in a while, and there's different people in that group. Some of them, if you don't tell them 2 weeks ahead of time, they will not come, because they like to plan things. And others are in the other extreme. If you try to make them plan something 2 weeks ahead of time, they're like, I don't like to do that. Let's just talk then. Let's talk 2 days before. We'll just see how things are there, right? So you got to balance things and deal with different people in different ways.
Yeah, I totally agree. Since we are on the topic of tools that help your team to communicate better, do you have any other tools that comes to mind at the moment besides
in terms
personality
of like
tests?
These kinds of things.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's a very long conversation. I can talk a lot about it, but if we just pick specific things, like, so personality tests are one. But again, personality test is not just sending them a link and just take a look at the result. It's the conversation, the
Yes.
understanding that we're different, going through examples. That's the value for me.
Yeah.
Disc you mentioned, which I think is awesome. Then there's this other kinds of tests which are not exactly personality tests, which like Belbin, for example, which is more about your personality specifically in a team, like your role in a team. Usually personality tests are just about you, but that's
Yeah.
more about how do you work in a team.
That's nice.
The general idea of team building done well. We all know how you can do silly team buildings,
Yeah.
but the more you just take a break from work and you go somewhere and you spend some time talking about you as a team, like how do we work together? What do you guys think it's working? What's not working? What should we change? Do you feel like we communicate well? Do you feel like we make decision well? Do you have all the information you need? Just having these conversations about how is the team working help. All these things help if you do them well. You can do them badly for sure.
I think also team coaching, it's a valuable tool that's
Yep.
not directly correlated with what we've been talking until now, but it could be a great tool to have in to use. And I think
Training
in the
too, of
end,
course. Yeah.
training too, obviously, but I think in the end, each of us has to be self-aware and try to improve themselves continuously to get better, learn more stuff, better understand how they work. So you as an employee, you don't only have to work on your skills, you also have to work on yourself and your understanding of yourself, because the most authentic you can be, the most happier you'll be in a workplace, because you'll know exactly what you need and like in a workplace, and you know how to communicate your needs and stuff like that.
Yeah, it
So yeah.
reduces your stress so much when you know that you're going to be able to handle any situation, any work situation. And by handle, I don't mean that it happens like you want it to happen, because sometimes things are out of your control. But you know that whatever people ask you to do, no matter how stupid, quote unquote, it is, you will have the maturity and the emotional intelligence to react well to it, to negotiate the best possible outcome, to communicate your needs. So when I see people being stressed out at work, it's usually because they have a feeling of lack of control. They're like, I don't
Yeah.
know what the client wants. I don't know what the boss wants, and things change all the time. And I don't know why they change. And they tell me to do one thing, and then they tell me to do another thing. And it's like, I don't understand what's happening around me, right?
Yes.
That leads to a lot of stress. When you start to, okay, let me communicate, let me understand, let me talk assertively, let me propose things, let me try to understand the points of view of others. Doesn't mean I necessarily change things, but I understand them and I feel like I'm in control, which helps a lot with your mental state.
Yeah. What I took from today's conversation so far is, and I want to make some additions here. Firstly, I think you have to, before applying this kind of tests to the team, you have to proper introduce the test and explain to
Yeah.
them that it's not going to impact your performance reviews. You're not going to be thrown out of the company because of this. It's just a tool to make us work better together. There are no bad answers, stuff like that, because people, especially in our culture, have a tendency to try to give the correct answer, and to a person in a
Yeah.
personality test there is no correct answer, it's just you. So that would be first, communicate why and how is this gonna happen. Secondly, apply the test. And thirdly, as most importantly, most importantly from my point of view, how you were mentioning earlier, is to debrief properly the test. Yeah, you have
Yes.
to
Yes.
communicate on the results and talk about what is that happening, and maybe have some aha moments in the teams. Oh, so that's why we have that situation, and that's why we are
Yeah.
working this way, and stuff like that. And having this kind of conversations will help greatly.
Yeah.
So
So
I got a lot of value from this podcast.
yeah, me too. Thanks. I even take it a step further. Like I send them a link to a test on a third-party site, which I do not control, like
Yeah.
a site. I don't see the results. and I tell them, you don't need to tell me the results. If you want to share, share, but otherwise just keep it to yourself. And then we'll get together and we'll workshop through what it means. You don't have to say anything. You just have to understand the differences, knowing you are this or the other thing.
Avoid the labels, basically.
Yeah, and we avoid the labels and we avoid any fear that is going to be used. So one effect that happens with all tests, in particular personality tests, is what is called desirability, which is the people's tendencies to answer not how they actually are, but how they imagine they are in an idealized version of themselves. So
it's matter of perceptions.
You get a question like, do you like to help people? Most people would say, of course, right? But sometimes maybe we don't help people that much.
We know better that you don't.
Exactly. And that's why professionally designed tests usually have multiple ways of asking the same things and ways of correlating the answers to sort of make sure you're being honest. And there's still ways to trick them, but it's more difficult.
Yeah. If you're a sociopath, most likely you'll be able to trick them because you know how to control all the cues, social cues. But we are not talking about this in this podcast. We are hoping
we're not
everybody
talking
has
about we're not the FBI trying to profile someone. We're just talking about simple tools to help people understand a bit more about themselves and work together in a team.
Yeah, this is not Criminal Minds. Profiling people and stuff. That's cool. Thank you for the conversation, Andrei. And I'm looking forward.
My pleasure.
For the next one.
Looking forward as well. See you. Bye-bye.
Yeah, bye-bye.